In case you are wondering why I dance, well, the reason is because I now have a standing desk, so I could actually stand up and dance when necessary. And my New Year's resolution really is that I'm gonna move more this year in 2025. And yes, it is gonna be a tough year for some of us, for many of us. But what we do know is that we are gonna continue to organize ourselves, share good information, and continue to work together to make our community safer. So with that, this is our second Family Justice Institute workshop of the year. As you could tell, we have lots and lots of people. So thank you all for being here to learn together. Continue to share your name, your affiliation through chat. And also today we are gonna have a really excellent workshop delivered by Ali Saidi, from the Public Defender's Office. He's also the founder and director of Stand Together COCO. They're going to get really active this year, as you could imagine. And he has like a slide deck that he's going to go over, but we will receive your questions if needed. So you could drop your questions in the chat, and then we're going to follow up with him. I'm going to be continuing to watch the chat box for your questions. In the meantime, I want to remind you that I think you all know what to do now in Zoom meetings. Please keep yourself muted until we ask you to unmute yourself. And what else? Basically, I think you know what to do, and I appreciate you being here. We are going to share the slide deck as well as an evaluation form after the workshop. We will ask you to fill out the evaluation form, and when you do, you will be able to actually print out the certificate of completion. That's our new feature this year. So with that, I think I've spoken enough and danced enough, and I look forward to this wonderful and informative presentation by our friend Ali Saidi. Ali, so you.
Thank you, Susan. Hello, everybody. My name is Ali Saidi. I'm going to share a screen to get the presentation started, but I just wanted to first thank the Family Justice Institute for putting this together, and Susan for being such a convener in the community, connector, bringing us all together, and thank you all for being here today. So let me share a screen here. Okay. So today we're going to talk about, is the screen shared? Excellent. Today we're going to talk about a little introduction to the U.S. asylum system and the Concord deportation court. So we're going to cover some big picture stuff, give you a better understanding of not only what asylum is, but also what's happening on the ground right now with immigration enforcement and what we're doing here locally in Contra Costa County to support our immigrant community members during this trying time. So, as Susan mentioned, my name is Ali Saidi. I won't go too deeply into this, but I am the director of Stand Together Contra Costa, which we're going to talk about, which is the county's immigrant legal services and rapid response network. But before we really get deep into that, I wanted us to zoom out. There's a lot of content that I want to get through, and I know people have a lot of questions, so we want to make time for that. But I think it's important, especially right now, especially as we're seeing humanitarian crises all around the globe, to really ground ourselves in what forced displacement and migration looks like. And why the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which you can see here on this slide, was originally put forward, and where did asylum law come from in the first place? So first of all, people have been moving. We are migratory animals. Borders are fictitious lines that we make up as human beings, as the human animal. And throughout history, people move and migrate. unfortunately, throughout history also, people are forced to migrate. That's called forced displacement, we say in the field. And in World War II, as you know, the planet was really on the brink. And as a result of that war, and at the end of that war, there was levels of mass displacement, the likes of which had never been seen before on a global scale. And the countries of the world, many of which were still recovering from war, economic devastation, and so forth, were having really not the best relations with the large number of refugees that were pouring across borders and trying to find protection because of all of the disruption in their home countries and because of ongoing oppression as new powers took over and started to oppress minority people. So in 1951, the countries of the world created the Refugee Convention, which basically originally described the rules by which all the countries agreed to play when people that aren't from that country or aren't citizens of that country come to that country and ask for protection based on a well-founded fear of persecution in their home country. And so most of the countries in the world signed this at the time. But interestingly, at the time, that convention only covered for incidents in Europe that happened before 1951. So they tried to target it very much to just focus on the impacts of forced migration to Europeans and the European theater of war. Ultimately, by 1967, there was a subsequent document signed by the signatory countries, so a binding international treaty called the UN Protocol on the Refugee Convention, which expanded the definition to include not only events before 1951, but also beyond the European borders. So that's the international framework for immigration and asylum. And that is the rule book by which we follow these rules. The same place and the same meetings that the Geneva Convention came out of, these things were signed in Geneva as well. So what are we seeing now? Well, today we are seeing forced displacement that has doubled globally since 2010. In 2010, there were 41 million people subject to forced displacement, and it's over 82 million now. These are the highest numbers we've seen since World War II. So the scale of the problem is approaching the levels at which we were just talking about. This is a issue, like most, that disproportionately impact women. 1 in 5 displaced women living in humanitarian crisis and armed conflict have experienced gender-based violence, and I suspect that that number is much higher than that, actually. Interestingly, in the United States, only 0.33%, so that's 1/3 of 1%. It's not 33%. Only 1/3 of 1%, so less than 1% of deportation cases are based on any alleged criminal activity by the migrant. Okay, that's really important because what you're hearing in the news, and all these statistics are available on Syracuse University's website. The Syracuse has a transactional record clearinghouse that collects all the immigration data. So what we hear is all of this noise about criminals and the incoming president of the United States said, when he first ran for office, the murderers and rapists and all of this fear-mongering, criminalizing narratives intended to dehumanize migrants. But in fact, only 1/3 of 1% of people in deportation proceedings in the United States are there because of alleged criminal activity. Now, one thing that people don't know about the asylum system is that when an asylum seeker has to present their case without an attorney, which, unlike in criminal court, where you have a right to a free appointed attorney if you can't afford one, because we had the good sense to realize that that is a constitutional issue of due process. That right has not yet been recognized in the deportation context. And so if you can't afford your own attorney in your deportation proceedings, you have to go forward without one. And when you have to go forward with an asylum case, which is the overwhelming number of people that are in deportation proceedings, people without an attorney only win 17% of the time. Whereas with an attorney, those success rates approach 70% nationally. And if you have one of our excellent attorneys at Stand Together Contra Costa, I'm really proud to say that we win over 90% of the cases that we bring. And so the difference between having access to due process, whether through an attorney or through services that can help you effectuate your legal rights, is really the difference between winning your asylum case and being deported and subject to all of the dangers that you'd face in your home country. Also, 1/3 of new deportation cases nationally are brought against children. So that is the scale of the issue we're talking about. And you'll see later when we talk about some of our local statistics that that bears true right here at home. Well over nearly 30%, 33% of our clients at Stand Together Contra Costa are minors. But we win. You can see this picture here. That's a client of ours that we were able to win asylum for. And he's able to stay here with his beautiful family. So we're really proud of the work that we do. So this is just another way to talk about the statistics that I mentioned before. So without a lawyer nationally, people only win 18% of the time, but with a lawyer, they win 48% of the time. And in San Francisco, without a lawyer, people only win 23% of the time, whereas with a lawyer, people win 69% of the time. And again, I'm proud of our win rates, so I put a big pie chart here. All right. So now that was zooming out, big picture stuff, right? The vast majority of clients that we're seeing at the border, the vast majority of folks that are coming to the United States are seeking asylum. And when I say vast majority, I'm talking in the 90 percentile. What is asylum? So asylum, it's not simply a rule to protect people that are in any kind of danger. It has a specific set of rules. So in order to be eligible for asylum, you have to demonstrate as the immigrant, the burden is on you to demonstrate that you have a well-founded fear of persecution in your home country based on a protected ground, such as your political opinion, your gender, your religion, particular social group that you belong to, okay? So it's a well-founded fear of persecution, generally by a government actor, or if it's not a government actor, you have to demonstrate that the government is unwilling or unable to protect you from those actors. And it's not enough that you're in danger. It has to be that the danger, that the motive of those that are trying to harm you, you have to show that their motive is based, at least in part, in substantial part, based on one of those protected grounds: religion, political opinion, gender, social group, and so forth. So it's pretty complex. So a lot of folks, almost universally, the folks that we're seeing are fleeing from violence. But it depends on why the motivation of the persecutor was trying to commit violence on you to determine whether you can win asylum or not. And that's a really complicated thing to do. So the folks that we're seeing here in Contra Costa County are some of the most resilient, impressive, can-do people that you will ever meet in your life. What you should know about immigrants, I'm an immigrant myself, is that immigrants are really hopeful, optimistic, brave, resilient, hardworking people, and especially asylum seekers tend to be problem solvers. And so the first thing I want to say is we want to make sure that when we're talking about this population, we are not being paternalistic. What they need is help understanding how our local systems work and empowerment in order to affect those things. So locally, we have a great program, Stand Together Contra Costa, that I described already. This is our little blurb. And we launched this program in another time of high anxiety for our immigrant community members and neighbors about 8 years ago. And the program has been a great success. It's a real flagship program. There's not a lot of programs like it in the country. And actually, we're getting lots of calls from other counties right now who are looking to beef up their local protections for immigrants like this program. So with this program, we provide free deportation defense removal services for people that live, work, or go to school in Contra Costa County. We have over 14,000 Contra Costa residents that are currently pending deportation cases. And so obviously we can't represent all of those people, but that's our eligibility list. Who are we seeing? Well, what we're seeing is, the folks that we're seeing in the courts and in our program. Here is a little chart of the clients that we represent, the different countries, and you can see some of the ethnic breakdowns. But we get folks from all over the world. Unfortunately, due to lots of crises going on right now in Central and South America, there's acute issues there, and so we're seeing a high volume of folks, as you can see, from Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, and Mexico. So this is some old data. I just wanted to put it in here. We do events. We go all around the country, all around the county. This picture is from a Liberian community event that we attended. And we also do free legal consultations in the community. So if you're with a service providing agency and you come across a community member that needs a legal consultation, please call us. Here's some more of our demographics of where our clientele live. And you can see here the age groups in the right-hand corner here. And so 21% of our clients are aged 1 to 17. And then if you add to that our transition-aged youth from age 18 to 25, 31% of our clients are youth. These are the types of cases we do. Like I said, the majority are asylum cases. This program is the only program that provides pro bono deportation defense services in Contra Costa County. But we partner with our local nonprofits. So we fund Jewish Family Community Services to also provide some of these services, as well as Immigrant Institute for the Bay Area.
Ali,
Yes.
just go back to the previous page.
Sure.
So when you say USCIS, what types of cases are those?
Sure. So those are cases in which that stands for the United States Citizenship and Immigration Service. And those are cases where if somebody's being charged with deportation, but there is some kind of affirmative application that they can file, for example, a family-based petition, or something, for example, like a U visa, a victim of crime visa, or so forth. Those are all applications that we file with that agency, and then we try to close the deportation proceedings against the client because of the pending affirmative application.
So could that include asylum cases as well, affirmative asylum cases, or asylum is in this other 59%?
Our asylum cases are in this 59%. But to your point, there's two ways to apply for asylum. One is a defensive application, which is what our program represents, folks. That's if you're in deportation proceedings, you can say, okay, I know that you're trying to deport me, but I came here to get asylum, so please process my asylum application before you deport me. So that's what we do. But for folks that aren't in deportation proceedings, let's say they came here on a visitor visa, or they're here on a work visa or student visa, but they have a well-founded fear of persecution in their home country, they can affirmatively file their asylum application with a place called the Asylum Office, which is a different process, and they can have that application adjudicated there. That is not included in this pie chart.
Okay, so there's a question in the chat that this only represents deportation defense, not the whole universe of asylum cases filed.
Absolutely.
Right. And
That's
then
correct.
I think the question is, who helps to apply for asylum from the chat?
Ooh, well, we're gonna get to that. Hopefully all of you. Okay,
Okay.
so also just with Stand Together Contra Costa, we just got approval from the county to get a mobile legal clinic. So we're going to be able to get a mobile legal clinic where we can go to day laborer sites like the Home Depot or other big box warehouses where day laborers are waiting. And while they're waiting for work, we can actually provide free legal consultations for them on site. And also to our agricultural sites where our agricultural workers are often excluded from a lot of these services, especially in Far East County. So we're excited about bringing that online this year. So there's a new deportation court in Concord. It opened up in 2024. We're going to talk about it a little bit. This is a picture of it. It's right in downtown Concord in the heart of the Monument Corridor District, which is a high concentration of migrants in our community. They built it to have 21 courtrooms available. As of today, there's only 10 or 11 of, no, yes, 11 of the courtrooms are occupied. There's 10 unoccupied, but there are plans to increase them that we'll talk about in a moment. So like I said, there's 11 immigration judges. You can see that I put judges in quotation marks here. I'm not just trying to be cute and mean. The reason I say that is because there's an important distinction to be made and an understanding of what these deportation courts are like, okay? It's not a court in the traditional sense that you'd think from your civics classes, right? We all know that in the United States, we have checks and balances, and we have three branches of government. We have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch, right? Separate entities that have checks and balances on each other. And the judicial branch, which is established in Article 1 of the Constitution of the United States, basically is separate from the other two in order to make sure that we have an independent judiciary, right? And so that we can have a fair application of laws and due process. Well, so even though they call this place the Executive Office of Immigration Review, we call them immigration courts. It's important to note that the people that are adjudicating these cases are not Article 1 judges, okay? These are actually employees of the executive branch of the government. They're employees of the Department of Justice, okay? Generally, it's like an attorney gets appointed to be a magistrate, in essence, an immigration judge or IJ, but that person is an employee of the Department of Justice, and as such has to take marching orders from the executive branch, okay? So there can be, there's not an independent judiciary. As I mentioned before, there's also not the right to free appointed counsel. So you don't get the right to an attorney if you can't afford one. There's no right to a jury trial. So that appointed Department of Justice employee is the one making the decision, not a jury of one's peers. And the federal rules of evidence don't apply. So as you can see, the system is pretty stacked against an efficient delivery of due process for the many migrants that we're seeing. And there's 3 more judges starting this winter, and the likelihood of 7 more judges coming at the end of this year. So they're about to double the capacity of this court that's already only been open for 8 months. It covers a large jurisdiction. These are some of the counties that it covers. Ignore the counties on the left-hand side, but I just wanted to show you the scale of it. The counties covers Contra Costa, Solano, Madera, Fresno, Inyo, Tulare, Kings, San Joaquin, Stanislaus, Mariposa, and parts of Alameda County. As I mentioned, most are arriving asylum-seeking family members. This little chart here shows you the zip codes. So the blue dots here are the places, the people that need to go to the Concord court. So if you live in Fresno, if you live in Bakersfield and you're in deportation proceedings, they're going to have you, unless you're detained, this court is not a detained court, it's for people out of custody. They are going to have you come to Concord. So you can see it's a wide geographic area. So the scale of the problem is gigantic. As I mentioned, there's not enough attorneys for people. In fact, representation rates since 2019 across the country have dropped really precipitously. In 2019, in deportation proceedings, immigrants nationally, we had representation rates up around the 60% range. Okay, so people in their final hearing for deportation, 60% of people nationally in 2019 were able to manage to get an attorney either by paying for one or by tapping into some of the limited pro bono legal services like we have at Stand Together Contra Costa. Well, between 2019 and 2024, that number plummeted. So in 2024, the average representation rates were 30%. Okay, so more than a half cut. So that means 70% of people today are having to go through their deportation proceedings without an attorney. And as you can imagine, immigration law is quite complex. Some say it's only second in complexity to the tax code. And so imagine trying to present your own legal defense in a country where you don't know the laws, you don't know the language, and you have been traumatized and have just fled for your life. A hard problem, right? So we here at Stand Together Contra Costa worked with our community allies at the Contra Costa Immigrant Rights Alliance, as well as our friends at the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity and the California Collaborative for Immigrant Justice to create a program at the Concord Immigration Court called the Legal Empowerment Initiative. Okay, so what we do with that program is as follows. The idea is we want to, this might be the only chance that we have to connect with these newcomer populations, our new neighbors in our community, right? Now, it's in a context that's quite scary for them, right? They're often going to their first court appearance. Usually it's a few months after they've arrived and presented themselves to ICE authorities. And they have to get to the court, figure out if they're at the right court, then figure out what to do. And so we wanted to make sure that we had attorneys present as much as we could to help provide people with a little bit of guidance. So that's the attorney of the day support. We give very brief consultations with people that are coming to their first court date so that they understand some of the key rules about, changing your address. What happens if you don't come to court? They will order you deported if you don't come to court. Really important information like that. And also a lot of their deadlines. So for asylum, this is another part of the asylum learning objectives, I think. If you want to seek asylum in the United States, you have to file your application within 1 year of entering the United States. Okay. If you don't file it within that 1 year, you might give up your right to apply for asylum. So it's a super important deadline. But the rub is that you have to apply for it by filling out a form in English and talking about your the merits of your case and why it qualifies for that complex legal definition that I gave you earlier. So one of the main things that we're seeing is people need support with filing their asylum applications. Well, why? First of all, most of them are trying to get asylum and they don't want to miss the deadline. And second of all, if you come into the country and then cross the border and then find Border Patrol or ICE and say, hey, I want asylum, then they put you into these proceedings, but while you're waiting in proceedings, you don't have the right to work in the United States lawfully. Until you file that asylum application and then wait for 6 months after your asylum application has been filed, then and only then can an asylum seeker that entered that way get their work permit, right? So the sooner they file their asylum application, the sooner we know that they won't miss the deadline, and the sooner they can get their work permit so that they can try to earn better money, so that they can possibly find an attorney given the lack of attorney representation. Given that lack of representation, we're really trying to do pro se legal support and help people file their own applications. Ideally, people will find an attorney to represent them in the entirety of their case, but the hard, cold reality is there just aren't enough attorneys. And so we are redeploying our legal infrastructure to support people in filling out their own applications so that their cases don't get denied based on procedural grounds. What else are we seeing in San Francisco, in Contra Costa? Well, we're seeing some differences, given that it's a brand new court, with how often people are showing up. So in San Francisco, you can see here during this period of time, 24.29% of people that had scheduled court dates in front of the San Francisco deportation court didn't show up. Okay. During the same period of time, in Contra Costa County, that was a 36% no-show rate. Okay, that's a 50% higher rate of people not making the court dates in Concord than in San Francisco. So clearly, statistically, we know that something is going on. And that makes sense because hundreds and hundreds of cases, if not thousands, were transferred from other jurisdictions like the San Francisco court to the Concord court, and people were just mailed notices for the change. Also, it's a new court and there's no signage and so forth. So there's really, really high no-show rates. And that's important because, as I mentioned, if somebody does not show up to their deportation court date, the judge has the option of ordering them deported right then and there without them even being present. Now, that's optional. The judge can choose instead to give the person a second chance. So here you can see the San Francisco for comparison. In San Francisco, these are the rates that the judges gave second chances to people that didn't show up to their court date. And the second chances, they reset them for another court date and send a new notice out so that the person has a second chance to come. So you can see the most of the rates are up here. Probably the average is above 75% here. And even the harshest judge, I would say, in terms of the second chances, gives second chances 52% of the time in San Francisco.
Ali, can you go back? So
Sure.
that's for the whole year? And so in other words, like each judge that you see handles the number that you see?
No, this is for this period of time from June 2024 through October 2024. We ran the statistical analysis for that first like 6-month or 5-month operational period of the court. Okay, so 52%. Now in Concord, you could see the numbers are wildly different. Okay, so there's a few of the judges that are granting second chances most of the time, but you could see we have 7 out of 10 judges are granting second chances in less than 50% of the time. And the presiding judge, Judge Julie Nelson, is only providing second chances 5% of the time. So what does that mean? That's an easy way for them to order deportations and clear their dockets because there's historic backlogs of cases, and the Department of Justice wants these cases moved as quickly as possible. And so the easiest way to move a case quickly as possible is to deport somebody without them even being in court. Okay, so that's kind of what's going on the ground. I wanted to just put a little plug here for everybody. This kind of doesn't fit with the flow, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. We believe that there's going to be an increase in ICE enforcement activity, even more so than the increases that we've seen in the past 4 years, which even under the Biden administration, we've seen historic levels of new deportation filings, never before seen. So that was under the Biden administration, and we expect it to get worse under the Trump administration. And we anticipate that they're going to be, in order to fit with some of their narratives, they're going to want to come after folks that have prior criminal contacts. This can include people that are longtime lawful permanent residents, that have grown up here, that have U.S. citizen families, and that maybe had, for example, a single drug conviction, 20 years ago, is enough to get somebody deported and lose their green card. So a lot of people don't know that there's some really powerful new remedies in California for people that weren't properly advised in their criminal case of how their criminal case could affect their immigration case. You have a right in the United States and in California to have your criminal defense attorney tell you exactly what immigration impacts a criminal charge or case will have on your immigration status. And the criminal defense attorney has a duty to try to defend against those immigration consequences. And if they didn't do so, there's a powerful law that allows us to erase those old convictions for immigration purposes effectively. Most other kinds of post-conviction relief, like expungements, clean slate services that you normally see, those don't actually work to effectively erase a conviction for immigration purposes. So if you know somebody that is an immigrant, and if you're messaging to immigrant communities, please make sure that you encourage them to contact their local public defender's office whenever they have anybody that's a non-citizen that has a prior criminal case. We might be able to help them, and that could be the difference between deportation and staying with their family in the United States. Okay, close to getting through this to the couple next pieces. What additional challenges do we forecast under Trump, and what's coming first? Well, this is the million-dollar question, right? In the immigrant services field, we in California, we're lucky. We have good state laws that limit the amount of collaboration that any law enforcement and any government actors in California can have with ICE. And in some parts of California, like Contra Costa, we're lucky to have both programs like Stand Together Contra Costa, but also a county that both through county government, through things like our Office of Racial Equity and Social Justice, through our health department, through our Employment and Human Services, really have a commitment to serving the community, to all people in our community, regardless of immigrant status. And we have all of you. We have a really strong community of folks that care. So the first thing I want to say is don't panic. Right? In the immigrant rights movement, we always say power, not panic. We want to respond with power and not panic. And that's the first challenge that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of panic in the community. Our hotline is ringing off the hook with folks saying, my friend's cousin said that they saw ICE at Costco, or they saw ICE go to the elementary school or something. What's going on, right? So the first thing is we want to make sure that we all, as trusted messengers to our community, are not panicking, right? We're not contributing to a culture of fear by spreading unsubstantiated rumors. So I'm going to put the, well, I don't know if I can get in the chat, but maybe somebody could put the Stand Together Contra Costa hotline number in the chat. It's 925 900 5151. And if you see ICE activity, you can call this hotline and report it. And we will send somebody as soon as we're able to go and try to observe, do legal observing without interfering with any kind of ICE activity, to determine whether or not it is ICE activity or if it's just a rumor. Spoiler alert, it's almost always been a rumor. And if there is ICE activity, though, we have attorneys that can be dispatched to go to the ICE Enforcement and Removal Operations Field Center, which is in San Francisco. That's where they take people if there's an arrest in Contra Costa. They're going to take them to San Francisco for processing. And we can send a lawyer there so that they can try to meet with the individual, advise them of their rights, and do a consultation to figure out what's going on in their case and see if there's any way that we can get them out. And meanwhile, our people that go to the scene, if we do find that there was an arrest, we can provide some resources to remaining family members or community members to let them know about next steps, okay? That's what the rapid response networks do. So please do not spread rumors on social media. Please encourage your community members to know that we have a network of rapid response services throughout the Bay Area and throughout California, and that it's important right now not to spread rumors and panic. We're seeing because of the environment, we're also hearing reports of not only drastic drops in enrollment rates in critical safety net services like Medi-Cal, but we're also seeing a lot of disenrollment as immigrant community members are concerned about who to trust and all of that. So we need to make sure that we're not contributing to a culture of fear, but messaging accurately and effectively back to the community about what services are available and trusted sources as well. So what's coming first? We do anticipate that they're going to try to do some kind of, splashy stuff and try to say, see, there's an invasion going on and we're going after bad guys. And so they're probably going to target people first that have either prior criminal system contact, even if those prior criminal system contacts aren't things that would render somebody inadmissible or deportable. If the person is simply undocumented but had, say a DUI 20 years ago or whatever, that's the kind of person that they'll target so that they can then also say that that's who we're going after. But also there's a lot of people with executed deportation orders. People from certain Southeast Asian countries in particular, like Vietnam and Cambodia, may have had a deportation order that was not able to be effectuated in the past because of international relations between the United States and those countries. But if the federal administration wants to, they can incentivize those countries to very quickly process those deportations. So that's who we think they're going after first. So the post-conviction relief side of things is very important to get the word out to the community. I tell everybody, find your fun cousin. Everybody tell your fun cousin, right? Everybody's got some fun cousin that maybe back in the day, maybe didn't follow all the rules and maybe got in a little scrape when they were in their 20s. Those are the people that we need to make sure know to contact their local public defender's office. But also what's happening is a lot of really good stuff in terms of services. And so we want to play defense, of course, and counter anti-immigrant narratives with pro-equity, pro-due process, pro-constitutional rights messaging. But we also want to continue with services, right? We want to continue making sure that we are leading the way in Northern California, in the Bay Area, in Contra Costa County, in showing a different way as the xenophobia that tries to say that the economic problems of this country are somehow due to an invasion of immigrants. We need to dispel those clearly erroneous rumors, right? Immigrants obviously, well, maybe not obviously, immigrants are not a drain on the economy or on society. Immigrants actually vastly benefit our workforce, our tax base, our economy. So that's all just fear-mongering. But we want to continue to show the services that we have. So ways to tap it. You can stand together with immigrants by speaking out against xenophobia and supporting due process for all, right? You're doing it by being here today. You're educating yourself so that as you encounter folks in the community or other partners that want to learn more, you can be an agent of power and not panic. You can volunteer with the Legal Empowerment Initiative. We have roles for people at the Concord court. So you can go, first of all, see for yourself how the system works in real time in Concord. You can come get trained as a welcomer and court watcher, so you can actually see what happens in these hearings. We also have positions for navigators, particularly folks that have multilingual skills to help manage the flow of people with the Attorney of the Day program. There's opportunities to volunteer with accompaniment to provide additional navigation or other services, including housing, emergency shelter, or other things with our newcomer neighbors. And we're going to be launching a really robust, innovative pro se asylum application support program. I know somebody asked about that in the chat earlier, and that's really exciting. We're going to be providing trainings for folks that are interested in how to support asylum seekers in filling out those asylum applications themselves, Oftentimes they just need some help with English and making sure that they're doing the things right and figuring out how to file it and all of that. And we can help train up people to do that and have a level of quality assurance with attorney review for those folks. Also, you can get the word out about post-conviction relief, as I said. The law that I mentioned that allows people that weren't properly advised of the immigration consequences to kind of undo an old conviction and be back in the place that they were before the conviction. They'll still have to resolve that case, but that allows us to go and get an immigration safe alternative. So please spread the word. Tell your fun cousins. And then finally, just be mindful of alienation and cynicism so that you're an agent of positive community empowerment and hope. Authoritarianism and inequitable distribution of resources and oppression, these things rely on the people feeling alienated and cynical, right? Feeling separated from each other, feeling dehumanized, feeling othered. That's the alienation part. And then the cynicism part is, well, what can I do, right? Like, this all sucks. There's so much here that sucks. Sucks, sucks, sucks. All the scrolling, it just sucks. I feel hopeless, right? So if you're hopeless and othered and alienated, then you're never going to have collective power, right? And those are the conditions for authoritarianism to thrive. And so really what we need to do is be mindful of those things, notice them in ourselves, take care of ourselves when we feel alienation and cynicism. I know I feel it every day. So just be mindful of it, care for yourself with it, and realize that as a community and as folks that are helpers in the community, which I know all of you are, we need to counter alienation and cynicism with togetherness, with community, right? That's the counter to alienation, showing up, being together. And the counter to cynicism is hope and a positive action. Let's get after it. So with that, we want you to join us in welcoming immigrants to Contra Costa County. We really want immigrants here. Immigrants, including myself, including Susan, including many of you on this call, are part of this community. There's not a separate immigrant community. Over 27% of people in Contra Costa County are foreign-born. And so welcome immigrants and join us in demonstrating a different way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. I do have a few follow-up questions, but I think I'm going to stop recording here, if that's okay, because I think this presentation